bring this monthly meeting of the League of Women Voters to order. First, welcome. I would like to introduce our Secretary, Marilyn Matzner, who will introduce our guest.
Okay, our speaker today is the foreperson of the 2021-2022 grand jury. And I was a member of that too. And anyway, he is a retired firefighter who lives in Royal Oaks. And he decided to apply because he likes public service, for which I think we should all be grateful. In 1974, Tom was hired by the Watsonville Fire Department, and he ended up retiring in 2003 as a fire prevention captain fire investigator. As the foreperson of the grand jury last year, he spent almost 40 hours a week on grand jury responsibilities, along with the other 13 of us that ended up being on the grand jury. Part of what he did last year was overseeing our report on the cannabis program in Monterey County. And here's Tom to tell you more about it.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to speak. And thank you for Marilyn for the introduction. The Monterey County Civil Grand Jury, the one that we just finished up, I think we ended up with the 15 people at the end, all inclusive. Marilyn was on there, sitting next to me at every meeting, being the secretary. So that really helped me out. And in the grand jury, to be in the grand jury, it's a volunteer system. The term of the member of the grand jury, and this is to preface the cannabis presentation with a little bit of knowledge as far as, you know, what we can and can't talk about, and the requirements of the jury, and maybe give a pitch to folks to think about joining the grand jury. The term of our jury, the jury members, is July 1 to June 30. The year of the jury that this reference is the 2021 cannabis report. The civil grand jury is made up of 19 volunteers from the county. Everybody raised their hand and said, yeah, I'll do it. And we ended up with, in the year, with 15 members. Pay for being a jury is a great $15 a day, plus mileage. And as a member of the civil grand jury, you're sworn to secrecy for life concerning the activities of the jury. In other words, when you have an interview with a person, you cannot at any time mention their name. That, yeah, we did an interview with so-and-so and they said this. No, you can't do that. For life, we have to keep that secret. Members cannot divulge in any way any of the names of the interviewed folks. And the only way the grand jury may conduct an investigation is by a supermajority vote of the members of the civil grand jury. So in other words, we had started out with 19. We needed 13 or 12 to be in the affirmative, or the mission would, or the vote would fail. So that if we had an investigation that someone wanted to, or I presented to the jury as a complaint, we would vote on it. And if one person was a holdout, in other words, we didn't get a supermajority, then we could not move forward on the action. The jury has advisors, and they are the Superior Court judge, a Superior Court judge, the county council, the district attorney, and they're available to the foreperson to consult on legal issues and questions. The reason that they're available to just the foreperson is it would be an absolute nightmare for them to be answering 19 persons different questions throughout the year. No one dictates or directs the jury to conduct an investigation. Anyone may file a complaint to the civil or with the civil grand jury. And it is a requirement that a minimum of two jurors be present during any interviews, any jury business like that. You always want the protection having two people. A super majority, like I was saying, a minimum of 12 members voting in the affirmative on any motion of the jury requiring action by the jury. Legalization, and this is legalization of marijuana. Cannabis was legalized in Monterey County in 2016. Monterey County began the process of developing the cannabis program as soon as it was legalized. And they put the cannabis program into action shortly after that 2016 vote. The investigation by the jury cannabis committee lasted the entire year with the jury. Most of the jurors worked about 20 hours a week on the jury. The state of California, the California Cannabis Authority, CCA, oversees and regulates cannabis throughout California. All counties that allow the sale of cannabis, Monterey County being one, must register and pay dues to the CCA on an annual basis. Currently, Monterey County pays $50,000 a year to belong to the CCA. The state has a track and trace system to track cannabis from seed to plant to purchase to disposal. We saw this in the facilities that we toured. Cannabis may be harvested up to 6 times per year. Growers pay a cultivation tax on the gross weight of the harvest. Currently, it's $660 per pound. As a grower, they must also submit all the cannabis that they produce and trim and get prepared for dispersal at the dispensaries and any other further testing or production in products. That has to go to a state approved lab to test for impurities and product strength. If the harvest is not approved, in other words, they found mold or they found a spray in there, they would have the entire harvest destroyed, which is being held at a prep facility that you'll see a picture of locally, a local processing building that processes nothing but the buds. The cost of the testing lab is $146. And if you mentally keep track of these costs, this will add up. So like right now, we're a little over $300 just to get your product to the testing lab, and that's per pound. Cannabis is still a federal category 1 drug. So it's up there with heroin and all the other opiums and that kind of thing. In 1994, the North American Free Trade Agreement passed, leaving the cut flower industry gutted when jobs went to Mexico, and hundreds of flower greenhouses were permanently closed. Over 9 million square feet of greenhouses were abandoned, about a total square footage of the Pentagon. I never imagined there were that many greenhouses in Monterey County. Currently, about 3 million square feet of greenhouses have been repurposed to cannabis cultivation. And what we're talking about for repurposing is most of the greenhouses that were flower growers before, or they grew flowers in, they had to raise the roof on those. So that required a building permit. So the initial application for a grow cost $5 a square foot at this time. Monterey County, if you think back to when this passed voting, they were talking about $25 a square foot. And it's permitted in 10,000 square foot allotments, $50,000 upfront per square foot allotment for every one of those before growing starts. The rate has been reduced to $3 a square foot. That's March of 2022. And to open a cannabis grow, it requires about $500,000. So $500,000. So you need some money behind you. You need some investors to say, yeah, let's do this. And we talked to one person and he walked us through his grow, and he said it was pretty hard. keeping all of his investors in happy in his grow and keeping the doors open. The Monterey County Cannabis Program, CP, was established in 2016, like I said, hastily, unfortunately put together, and it consists of a program manager and currently 28 full-time employees. Now, these are the people that the cannabis program pays for through all of the income that the program has. The program costs $6.334 million and is approximately 1/3 of the program revenue. They see approximately $18 million come into the program, and then the allocations start from there, from the discretionary budget of the Board of Supervisors. Since inception, the program has collected approximately $69.7 million. Now, delinquency on permit fees or taxes, that kind of thing, has dropped from 19% to 12%. After a grow falls behind on taxes and permits, they often pull up the product and disappear into the night. Literally, they will remove their product and equipment and be gone just in the blink of an eye. Cannabis production has grown into a crop with a market value of $484 million in 2021 in Monterey County, one of the top 3 most valuable crops in the county. So that's pretty impressive. In what, 6 years, this has grown now to a top 3 crop in the county. I think lettuce and strawberries are 2 leaders over that. The cannabis program funds are considered discretionary funds, and half of the county general fund budget, $266 million, is discretionary. The biggest source is revenue, the revenue from property tax. The second largest source is revenue in cannabis. The county does not maintain records of how many idle greenhouses have been repurposed or how many jobs have been created by the cannabis program. Monterey County is the 4th largest cannabis producer in the state. So again, in 52 counties in the state, if we're the 4th largest, like, wow, we've got some pretty good growing weather and climate. Inspections. The cannabis industry, Monterey County has an inspection program. It's run by the cannabis program. It consists of 5-member teams visiting the facilities. It's conducted on unannounced inspections about once a month. They can come sooner, they can go later. And at the time of the investigation with the Cannabis Committee, Monterey County Civil Grand Jury found much inconsistency, and that was a major complaint with the growers, the inconsistency of the inspections for the cannabis program. We were told that they would have an inspection conducted on their facility 1 month. A couple of weeks later, another crew comes in and they find totally different stuff. Don't even call out any of the stuff that they haven't fixed from the last inspection. So that's a big frustration with the growing group. Everything with cannabis is heavily regulated. Any byproduct or waste product that is not used is required to be transported by a state licensed cannabis waste hauler. This includes inert vegetable matter, soil, root ball, the trimmings, dead plants. Even the accumulation of soil is regulated, including the size of the dirt pile. That I just couldn't put my head around why the dirt pile is being regulated, and you have to have a licensed hauler haul it away. Like in the trimming room that we saw, plenty of cannabis laying on the floor that they would sweep up, accumulate, bag it, weigh it, And then that's all part of their waste that they have to keep track of. This is including all of the weight of the trimmings. Additional permits, like I was saying earlier, building permits are required for greenhouse renovation and upgrades. And most greenhouses are too low, so the roof has to be raised. Air filtering may be required. And what they use is air scrubbers, and they place those. I think the biggest ones that you see, or you probably don't even see them, it's installed on restaurants in cities where there might be some complaints about odor. They require them to install scrubbers on their hood and duct system that filter and scrub out any of the odors, and it really cuts it down. I've got a grow right around the corner from me, and if the wind is blowing the right direction, it really permeates the air. Fire permits are required in Monterey County Regional Fire Protection District. They have a square footage, I believe it was 10 cents a square foot. Do you recall, Marilyn? I don't recall. I think it was 10 cents a square foot. The capital improvements, again, they require permits. And keeping now in mind, you just improved your property, so here you go with your property taxes. They're due to the reassessment of the property. As soon as they raise the roof on these houses, on the greenhouses, they're reassessed to new construction. And that was another concern that the growers had. Permits to develop a growing operation have taken years for some of the permits to be issued. And Monterey County Civil Grand Jury found the main bottleneck in the permit process was the Resource Management Agency, also known as the Building Department. And the growers, with the permits for the growing operation being issued, there was a number of concerns that were voiced, when we're doing our tours or our interviews, about how long it takes. And I don't know, it's whether they're using consultants or they're using in-house, I don't know. Additional taxes, there's business taxes that are collected from the retailer and the consumer. Manufacturing business tax is a 4.5 of gross receipts. Distribution taxes, 4% of gross receipts. And testing lab taxes are 1% gross receipts. Dispensary taxes are currently at 4.5% gross receipts. And then you have sales tax on top of all those. The Adult Use of Marijuana Act passed the voters, and cities were told they could opt in or out of the cannabis arena or the cannabis programs. And the illegal growers or black market growers outgrow legal growers fourfold. So that is a huge concern for the cannabis industry. If you've ever been into a dispensary, it's wide open, they've got employees around, and they've got heightened security in those areas also. So, but they have a hard time competing when the illegal growers don't have to send to a lab, they don't have to pay any of the taxes, they don't have to pay the state or county requirements or have inspections or anything like that. These growers got the market for the they got the market for the legal growers, and the legal grows can't compete with that black market. It's just too difficult. And you've seen in the press lately, 3 months ago or so, Monterey County Sheriff's Office or the cannabis program took down a sizable grow. I believe it was down South County, wasn't it? During the investigation by the Cannabis Committee, interviews were conducted with Monterey Cannabis Program, the CAO office, California Growers Association, staff from the County Treasurer's Office, Auditor Controller's Office, members of the Board of Supervisors, and Monterey County Cannabis Industry Association. The jury toured a cultivation farm, a regional dry and shed processing center, and a processing plant, all in the area of Salinas. Now, many websites we visited, and we reviewed county documents, websites for budgets, regulations, annual reports, and consultant studies. Numerous articles were gathered from media outlets and UC Davis Agricultural Issues Center. Now, the regional drying shed and processing center, this person or this group started the drying operation. It's a huge metal building outside of Salinas. And I'll show you a picture of one part of their operation. They subcontract for the trimming, the drying, all of that kind of thing for multiple grows. So then there isn't a duplication of effort on the amount on the part of the growers. So somebody had the foresight to think, okay, I start up a drying shed, and then we get the trimmers in, we trim the bud, and it's ready for sale. And in the meantime, it's being tested at the lab. So once it's done, you're done. Throughout the investigation, the jury found a lack of transparency with the Monterey County's cannabis program. The County of Monterey hired Citygate Associates to review, quote unquote, the organization of the cannabis program, the current cannabis program. Many of the findings of the Citygate report supported the findings of the Monterey County Civil Grand Jury. Citygate's contract was $200,000. Forgot a zero there. And it was interesting because we read that after our report was ready to go for review. Review is by county council, the district attorney's office, and the Superior Court judge. All three of them have to sign off on our content so that we're not slandering somebody, we're not talking about any one person. Anybody can't be identified in the report. So you couldn't read the report and glean from that report, oh yeah, you talked to Joe or you talked to Jim over there. So, but it was interesting to see $200,000 spent, and we came up with the same findings on many points. This is a greenhouse grow. These are juvenile plants that are just out of the nursery down here, and follows this row and this one here. And then as they're progressing, this is pretty juvenile also. And then these are getting up there in height a little bit. Sorry for the quality of the print. So these are all tended to, the lights are hung from the ceiling. And we'll see another grow here. This is the same grow. And this is a person that we talked to about a lot of the stuff as we were there. These grow lights up here in the ceiling turned on, and they're all automatic. So watering is automatic. The grow lights are automatic in this facility. These are mature plants, and I can't see buds right now. In these areas around the top part of the plant, you'll find the buds that they trim off and harvest, and then let it grow some more. And again, this has all been harvested out. They're going to be redoing this whole line here with juvenile plants. This is pretty mature, and these are pretty mature. They're all labeled, and it's all posted for each one of the varieties. Like in these sheds, they could have 10 different varieties of marijuana. They all go by different names, growing in here. They're all female plants. If they ever have a male plant in here, it will kill the crop. The crop will stop producing. So they're very specific in what they put into their nursery. This is the trim facility that we were talking about, trim and drying. These are all trimmed buds. Now keep in mind a bud is anywhere from a pencil eraser up to a thumbnail. And these are full in plastic bags, all processed. Each one of these facilities, each one of these white tags represents a different grower on the cannabis, and they're waiting for clearance from the testing lab first, and then naturally they want their money for trimming up their buds for them. So our findings, the estimated price for finished product, finished cannabis product dropped from $1,600 a pound in 2020 to $500 per pound in 2021. That is $1,100 dropped in 1 year. And that's due to the glut in the state cannabis supply and the illegal grows. The major sources of cannabis revenue in Monterey County comes from assessed square footage of cultivation. Growers paid around $19 million in assessed taxes in 2021. An additional $1.4 million in taxes were collected from other cannabis businesses, including dispensaries, processors, quality assurance testing, delivery, transportation, and disposal. In the past 5 years, just under $70 million has been collected in cannabis taxes. That's pretty good money. Even with the glut of the cannabis on the open market, Monterey County is still actively processing a 9-fold increase in provisional licenses over the active and complete licenses. The provisional licenses are the ones that are being held up currently. Well, I'm speaking from 6 or 8 months ago now, held up in the plan check arena. County full-time employees, the staff, have increased from 6 to 8. They started out with 6 in 2016, and now they're up to 8 in 2021. 2022, involving multiple agencies that regulate, inspect legal cannabis, and enforce the eradication of illegal cannabis in the county. The county cannabis program is the county's regulatory infrastructure with a budget of $6.3 million, a third of the county's revenue in 2021. Consumers also pay state sales tax, state excise tax, and county and city sales taxes, which results in a 4-fold increase in price compared to unlicensed illegal cannabis. Allocation of the Cannabis Tax Assignment Fund, CTF, is difficult to track. The increase of property value is due to requirements of the building program or construction program has not been available to the public. And that's something that the committee worked tirelessly trying to find that information, and they just couldn't find how many jobs it's created or how much the property values have increased due to the cannabis program. And then continuing with findings, it's to help the passage of AUME, adult use marijuana. And the Board of Supervisors stated the new industry would bring new economic development and jobs to counter losses from NAFTA, the Federal Trade Agreement, 22 years prior. Monterey County did not hire an economic development manager and staff until November of 2021, 5 years after the cannabis program was started and established. The number of new jobs in the cannabis programs, and not the county, but the amount of jobs created by the grows, trimming, all that kind of stuff, we don't know. We were trying to find that information because to us, that was pretty relevant to what's going on. Many inspections do not operate in a consistent manner, nor with a standardized checklist. We were looking for a standardized form that maybe the health department had or the fire department had, and there was none. You would think that they could go out and hand the grower, this is what we're going to be looking for when we come back, hand him the check sheet so that they could go out and look at whatever they've got in their greenhouse, in their grows, and move on. They're talking about the combustibility of marijuana. Even in its dried state, it smolders and pretty much snuffs itself out. So there isn't a problem of high combustibility or flammability of marijuana. The recommendations that came from the 21-22 Cannabis Committee we were asking that they require Monterey County Cannabis Program to provide a comprehensive annual report detailing all CTF revenues, allocations and reserves. This report should include detailed information, including budget and distributions to community service agencies. The cannabis program must publish its annual report on the website implementation by December 31st. Whenever we have any recommendations, we have to tack on an implementation date. And what we're asking for them to do is just to make this thing simpler. We're asking for revise the Monterey County Cannabis Program webpage to include easy to follow directions for assessing revenues and expenditures implementation by December 31. Anybody knows that the click of a button on a computer can bring a vast amount of knowledge, and we're asking that a point be placed on the website for the cannabis program that you can click, and it's sort of like a live page that they could post showing all of the revenue and expenditures out of the program, like the library bus that the cannabis program bought. $150,000 was authorized by the Board of Supervisors. If you recall back in 2016 when we voted in marijuana, that was one of the biggest things, is that they wanted the cannabis program to be supportive of community programs and the communities themselves, education, all of that. So that's why you're seeing expenditures in that way. And Monterey County, we need them to monitor and report on improved property value and tax assessment due to the cannabis program regulations. Again, we're just asking for accountability. All right, this is brought on by the cannabis, so where's this money going? They paid X amount of money for a permit. Now they're being reassessed on their property taxes. So let's see what's happening. And it just is not available. Direct the economic development manager to complete a study of all new jobs created by the cannabis industry and its impact on the local economy. And we're asking that for implementation of June of 30. Include the cannabis program annual report and accounting of all FTEs, full-time employees, funded by the CTF. Implementation by December 31 of 22, and the cannabis program adopt a consistent process for the inspection and a checklist. Implementation December 31 of 2022. Required responses. Elected officials are required to respond within 60 days. This is all laid out in the California Penal Code. The auditor controller is required to respond to all findings and recommendations. The assessor clerk to respond to all findings and recommendations. Monterey County Board of Supervisors must respond within 90 days. They're elected officials to all findings and recommendations. These requirements for responses are spelled out in the California Penal Code 933 and 933.05. Invited responses. We invited the Monterey County Cannabis Industry Association to respond to all recommendations. Monterey County Cannabis Program Manager, some findings and some of the recommendations we have asked her to respond to, and Monterey County Economic Development Manager, some of the findings and some of the recommendations. I just want to voice a big thank you to the Monterey County Cannabis Industry Association. We touched bases with them. We had them in for a presentation to the jury, and they arranged for the tours for the jury that we devoted almost a full day to, going around to the, we went in reverse order. So we went from a finished product. In other words, you're getting the oil for vaping. They make gummies. They do pre-rolls of the marijuana and hash, and it's all packaged ready for retail work. And then we went to the drying barn, drying shed that we saw all of the Costco cartons in that have their cannabis. And then we went out to the grow. So the whole thing was extremely interesting to everybody else. Okay, questions?
One person wants to know, where does the disposal material go? Is it destroyed? Is there a market for that material?
That
All
goes
stuff
to
that
a
thrown away
landfill.
goes to the landfill?
Yeah.
Can cannabis grown in Monterey County be sold outside California?
No, California cannabis cannot cross state lines. It cannot be exported across the state lines. Nor can anyone from the other states bring their stuff into California.
And a follow-up question, is any growing of marijuana happening outside the Salinas Valley, such as in Big Sur or other parts of the county, or is it all centered around the greenhouses in the Salinas Valley?
From what we found, there's a few, like I said, up here in Royal Oaks. Again, they were cut flower industry, roses in this area. And I know of a couple that are right here, and then they start down the valley. I don't know of any down Big Sur area.
Great. Here's another question from Sharon. Thank you for your information. How often do the lab tests lead to crop destruction?
You know, we didn't get into that. The growers that we talked to, and the general feeling from the cannabis industry was it's not very often. Love these phones. It's not very often that a crop's destroyed, because they're very cognizant of the mold, and they're also cognizant of any insecticides that are applied. So normally they're not going to be spraying any of the marijuana with insecticides, because they don't want to take that chance. It goes into the lab and it gets thrown out.
Here's a question from Mary Ann. Could you go over once again current revenues compared to revenue projections when the program was instituted in 2016?
Okay, the program revenue right now is about 18 million. When they started, they were talking about a lot of money up front from these grows, as I was saying. And I'm trying to find it in the report. Because I want to give you some accurate information. Okay, right. For instance, the grow rate is going to cut the cannabis revenue because they dropped it down in March of 2022 to $3 a square foot. It's going to cut approximately $6 million from the program. So that's a pretty big hit on the program. As far as other revenues, I don't think that answered your question. Did that answer your question, Marianne?
Struggling to unmute myself. Yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of whether this crop, I mean, it seems to me that it is, because you've said the third most important crop economically in our county. I just wanted to get a sense that with the pressure from illegal grows and other challenges, whether it was living up to the projections of the revenues it would provide for the county. I guess I have a sense that it's successful.
I think the Board of Supervisors was looking at a pot of gold that they didn't get, but they still got a pot of gold. You know, $18 million a year, that's a chunk of change that the board will hear a presentation, and then two board members, Alejo and Lopez, are on the hearing committee that say yay or nay to spend the funds. So as far as any other, I think that they're doing pretty good. What's going to keep hurting them is the illegal grows and the illegal marijuana getting into the marketplace.
George Riley had a question. Is all monitoring inspection work done by the 28 employees of the program, or are there additional costs on law enforcement?
Law enforcement is part of the program.
Oh, okay.
Law enforcement, and I believe the sheriff's office budget was $500,000, almost $500,000 for 2 deputies. And
so that was included in the budgeting, the law enforcement part of it.
oh yeah, they're part of that $6 million that it takes to run the program. The health department has members on the inspection team. Their wages are paid, the salary, all the benefits, they're paid by the cannabis program. So it's self-supporting, and I think that's the biggest thing that for the county is that it's a self-supporting program. That gives a little bit of juice to the other activities outside. So
here's a question about power requirements. Did your committee look into, or does the county monitor energy use? And is the cannabis more energy intensive use than the flower greenhouses that were shut down?
You know, we didn't get into that. I would imagine that with the new LED grow lights and that kind of thing, they're going to be more efficient than the old grows or the old greenhouses that were growing roses and chrysanthemums and all the others. So I would think personally that it's more of a more green, so to speak, than it used to be. A lot of green.
Yes, good point. And another question, where does the estimate come from that illegal grows are 4 times legal grows?
That's from the industry in the state of California, with
Okay.
all of their work that they've done up north in getting down the forest groves. I was a member of the California Civil Air Patrol, and we flew hybrid missions up above Eureka in that area. And you could actually see the devastation of the forest where a grow was, or when we flew over where it is, you would see a V pattern going from a wide swath down to a point at the bottom of the hill that they're cultivating on. It was just killing everything in its sight,
Wow.
which was really sad when you see those forests so lush and green, and all of a sudden you see a big bald spot on the mountain.
Yeah, it was just, so that answers the question. The majority of the illegal growing is in Northern California. I had assumed we had a good bit in the Santa Lucia Mountains.
Oh yeah, there's some. Yep.
And one more question on top of that. What are the top recommendations for improving the legal to illegal grow ratio? Is there any recommendations by the committee or your own personal feeling?
There
on
was
that?
no recommendations other than keep enforcing the requirements to get permits and that kind of thing in the testing. Because these people don't care. When they're coming into the state, they don't care what's in their product. As long as they can sell it, it's done. Another thing is that the testing labs in California, they were having the medical marijuana, and they had contaminated samples coming in from quote unquote legitimate growers, but it wasn't. They contaminated vape cartridges with vitamin E to get a spread, and that causes severe lung damage to somebody that is vaping.
Here's another question. Do illegal grows use a lot of water? And how about the illegal ones?
Legal grows are all set on timers. It's all drip irrigation. The larger grows, like the ones that I showed you the pictures, they had a complete automatic system that dispenses fertilizer, it dispenses everything else, so you don't have any runoff. The illegal grows, they don't care where their water is running from. They'll pipe in a 1-inch pipe and just let it flow. They really don't care. So to me, the industry is green, where the illegal industry is out there in La La Land doing what they want.
Yeah. Janet Brennan asked, did the grand jury review representatives of illegal growers? Did you review the pilot program for growers in Carmel Valley and Big Sur?
No, we did not. We didn't talk to any illegal growers. I don't think that anyone would want to come in and say that they were growing marijuana illegally to the grand jury. So that was one of those, that would be a hard one to get. We had, some hesitancy even on the legal grows to step forward and let us in their door because of the height security and having strangers come in and do whatever with the information. But as you saw in the report, the grand jury stands by the report as confidential, and we are not sharing any confidential information in there. So.
And the second part of that, do you have any comments, or did you review the pilot program for growers in Carmel Valley and Big Sur?
We didn't have that presented to us, I don't think.
Okay. Which brings me to a question. Have you gotten responses, the required 60 and 90-day responses that are required by law? Because I know this report came out in the spring.
Yeah, and we gave them till the 31st to get back to us, December 31st. So if it's like any of the other responses, they haven't come in yet. And if you're interested, you can go to Monterey Civil Grand Jury, type in Monterey County Civil Grand Jury reports, and it'll take you right to the web page that the reports are stowed on. It's on the Superior Court webpage, And on there, as they come in, any responses you can see on there, on the same pages.
And correct me if I'm wrong, did you say the requirement to respond is not enforceable, or what happens if you don't get those responses? Is there any action taken by anyone?
Well, we go out and knock on doors. As far as any teeth to the law, there isn't. We've had a few agencies, local agencies, that didn't respond to reports. One of our committees went all the way back 10 years in reports and compiled a list of people that have not responded. And we made a few phone calls, wrote some letters, and talked to the judge about taking action. And the judge, she just said, no, there's nothing that we can do about it. So
It's just embarrassing. We try to embarrass them by putting, on the grand jury website that these people didn't respond, but that's the most you can do.
yep.
Bev Krebs wants to know who runs and supervises the testing labs.
Who does what?
Who runs and supervises the testing labs for the marijuana?
Those are private entities. There's no state-run lab, but they have to be state approved. We don't have one in this area. I believe the closest one is San Jose. And as it stands right now, the state stands, they approve them and let them go about their business. And then if they have problems, they get a hold of the state. But it's all directed by the state health.
Thank you. Sharon wants to know, would a public education program to highlight the dangers and drawbacks of illegal cannabis be effective in your opinion?
It could. The illegal cannabis, I think the best thing that gives us the press there is when they make an arrest and they take down a grow, because that's really good press to show the growers that you're not being watched, and just watch out because here we come. So as far as the grows, it might help, but I don't know.
Did you find any areas that could be optimized to make the legal growing more attractive, or somehow to reduce that fourfold cost difference? I understand that it's mostly regulated, but it seems like the dangers of the illegal marijuana, from the chemicals to the mold to all the problems with it. Is there any way to optimize legal?
The legal grows?
Yeah, versus the illegal, to make it more, the price difference is everything. There's no no way around that. Sort of publicizing the dangers of the illegal product.
Yeah, that would be one. The one big thing that the committee generically talked about was lowering the taxes, lowering the prices to operate. That was just, you're talking $500,000 just to get started on a greenhouse. That's a lot of money just to get started and take a gamble that your product is going to get picked up. So, yep.
Here's a question from Alice Ann. Are the consistent checklists left up to the fire department and the cannabis industry to create, or would there be other input? I assume she means the inspection checklists?
Correct, like a fire prevention form for the fire department. I don't know that they've had that kind of an issue with the fire department, but it's mainly the health department, the sheriff's office. Let's see, health, fire, building. A different inspector is going to see different things on an inspection, and that's the part that's frustrating. In the cannabis program, to me, and I believe the feeling of everybody, was the cannabis program in Monterey County put together a uniform checklist by all of their people into one and say, okay, this is a checklist we're going to go by, and make it much simpler to operate your grow. To me, that would be the cat's meow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Dennis Marr says, thank you, Tom, for your presentation. Without the time commitment to the civil grand jury, what are you going to do with your new free time?
My free time?
Or are you going to sign up again?
Well, I don't know about that. I've been approached by it for next year, but I don't know. The at the height of our work, I was working 50, 60 hours a week with all of the committees. And like Marilyn said in my introduction, my job was to monitor all of the committees, all the functions of the grand jury, and keep track of what everybody's doing. And that was quite involved, a very interesting position. So now that I'm off, I'm catching up from a year of not being around the house, out here living in the rural area. So, yep, my wife has plenty of honeydews for me.
Just one last question from George Riley. I think he wants to know if illegal grow for the legal growing of marijuana, is it any of it outdoors? And I don't believe so. I believe all of it has to be indoors, doesn't it?
You know, there are outdoor grows, and in the forest you see the outdoor grows. They don't normally put up the canopy, or if they're in a cold area, they'll put up a canopy. The plastic hoops that we see out there in the growing of the strawberries and berries now. As far as outdoor, well, we saw that one that was that the eradication group got, and I believe that was South County. They were growing marijuana behind berry bushes. So
is it legal? Is it legal for legal growers to grow other than in greenhouses?
Okay, it is legal for grows to grow outside of greenhouses, but they don't do it. They found more control and better growing atmosphere for the cannabis if they have a cover and they can heat it, and they can do all their lights and control the lights, control the water, control the temperature, which is important for all the marijuana.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions from the audience? Not seeing any. Oh, go ahead. I see someone with a hand raised. Pat?
Clapping hands.
Oh, that's clapping hands. Okay, well, I just want to add to that, to thank Tom, not only for presenting to us today, but for the amazing amount of work that he did on the behalf of Monterey County. And I hope that the grand jury recommendations will be heeded. Thank you for coming today. And thank you, Marilyn, for your continued service on the grand jury and for helping us to find Tom to talk about this.
We'll be the ones to see if they did what they said they were, what we asked them to do by December 31st.
Yep.
Great. Thanks again for coming. I'll turn it back to Mary Ann.
Learned a lot. It was great.
Oh, good. Thanks.